Joining us in studio tonight, very pleased to have with us the General Counsel of the Independent Women's Forum, Gail Trotter. Gail, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Your piece, Jovan Belcher, Bob Costas, and Theories of Causation, I thought was really interesting. You know, obviously the anti-gun side wants us to have a conversation about guns that starts from the position of guns are evil and they need to be banned, and NRA members are horrible people too. I think if we're going to talk about what happened this weekend, then let's talk about, you know, when we talk about why violent crime occurs and why violent crime drops, nobody says violent crime is dropping only because of the rise in right-to-carry holders. I don't believe that, or only because of the rise of legal law-abiding gun owners. There were a lot of reasons why what happened this weekend happened. To blame it on guns, to blame it on mental health, to blame it on any one thing, I think is wrong.
Correct.
And so you get into the theories plural, of causation here. Let me ask you, first of all, what do you think about Bob Costas using 90 seconds of time to basically talk exclusively about guns?
I don't mind that he addressed the issue. It was appropriate for him to address the issue, but the excuses he's giving now for why he came up with gun as the but-for cause of the tragedy that happened with this couple is outrageous. And he's saying that he was just trying to draw attention to many aspects that could have caused this tragedy to happen. Yet, unsurprisingly, being a liberal pundit, the one that he zeroes in on as the but-for cause is the gun in the situation.
Yeah.
And I would say that the only thing we can be sure that guns cause is guns cause liberal pundits to totally ignore logic.
You know, I think you're right. And I did a couple of interviews today, and I was thinking about this. You know, Bob Costas doesn't know anything about guns, and we've pretty clearly determined that, and he's helped us out with that. Well, Bob Costas does know a lot about his sports, and he does know a lot about the NFL, and he does know a lot about football players.
Yes.
And he could have talked about the fact that there are 21 NFL teams now that have players who have either been arrested or convicted of domestic violence or sexual assault. And he could have talked about the fact that there have been 6 NFL players who have committed suicide over the past 2 years. And there are a lot of questions about what repeated concussions and what these, you know, knocks to the head do to somebody's mental state over the course of their football career. There are a lot of former players who are actually raising these very questions.
And suing the football league.
Absolutely.
For the CTE.
Now, Bob Costas would have been very well qualified to talk about these things. Completely unqualified to talk about this from a gun control perspective. And so I wonder, Gail, if there's not a note of cowardice to what Bob Costas did. He took the easy way out. It would have been a very difficult thing for Bob Costas during the halftime of a football game to say, we need to think about what we as sports writers, what we as executives, what we as fans are willing to put up with in order to be entertained a few times a week.
Yes, and he was saying that he was trying to offer a different perspective.
Right.
Yet it's never a different perspective
Different
to take
from
the
what?
situation and say that it's the gun that caused it. And I'm a graduate of the University of Virginia, and we had a horrible case a few years ago of a lacrosse player who was in a relationship with another female lacrosse player, and he battered her to the point of, if you read the trial testimony of what he told the police her condition was when he left the room, he said something to the effect of she was flopping around like a fish. So he did so much damage to her just with his bare hands that she died, and she had horrible traumatic injuries. And there was no gun in that situation.
Look, Bob Costas spent some time in the broadcast booth with a guy named O.J. Simpson.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, really, that's the thing. If this is Bob Costas's perspective, and he said, remember, he said, let me give you some perspective on this. Well, if after spending time in the broadcast booth with O.J. bleeping Simpson, your perspective is, if we didn't have guns, these people would have been alive. Why are you on my TV? Why are you not repairing my TV? I mean, honestly.
I
You
agree.
know?
I
Why-
agree. And to look at the multiple reasons I
By
laid
the
it
way,
out
no
in my-
offense to TV repairmen who by the way, are much more competent, I believe, than
Yes.
Bob Costas is.
Yes,
So
I agree. I trust them much
I
higher.
take back that analogy.
Well, I lay out in the piece that I wrote about 6 different things that could have caused this to happen. The illegal drugs, and we have the left pushing for legalization of drugs. The out-of-wedlock childbirth. The left is doing everything it can do to destroy traditional marriage. Does Bob Costas bring that up? That would be a different perspective. That would be something, courageous for him to say.
Yep.
What about the alcohol use? Supposedly the report showed that he was out on an alcohol binge with another woman the night before this happened. Does he draw attention to that? No. And the one thing that you're saying that he's an expert on, he raises in that commentary on Sunday night. He says, well, we'll probably ask about what the effect of football was on this situation, but, and I quote, who knows?
Right. Right.
So he's willing to say with absolute certainty that guns are the but-for cause of why this happened. Yet when it comes to football, something he has knowledge about, he becomes agnostic about it and tries to have this fine distinction between the causation of this.
Absolutely. And so, Bob, if you happen to be like tuning in, if you're a glutton for punishment and you're, watching all of this stuff and you're wondering, why is this happening to me? It's because of this. It's because of your behavior. You did take the easy, cheap way out. You said you wanted to offer a different perspective, but as Gail, as you said, you offer the exact same perspective that we get every time a tragedy happens.
Every
it's
time.
the gun fault. It's the fault of the law-abiding gun owners. If they weren't such intransigent, heartless individuals, by golly, we would have a crime-free society. It would be heaven on earth, and it's the NRA and their heartless allies who sell guns who are standing in the way. And it's absurd. We don't agree with it. There are all kinds of things that we could have been talking about, and you chose to make it about the gun. And yeah, we are ticked off about that. And we're entitled to be angry about this. We're not going to be scapegoated.
Right, and if you really care about violence against women, arm women. Guns are the great equalizer for women. Women facing threat of murder, rape, violent assault, any of these things. I mean, you look at him. He was 6 feet 2 inches tall. He was over 225 pounds. I mean, I'm 5'6", and facing somebody like that, I wouldn't stand a chance.
Right.
And if you want to create a situation where women are safe, you need to protect their gun rights so that they, when they are violently attacked, they have some chance of being able to defend themselves.
Yeah. No, listen, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we do the armed citizen story every night, the hero of the day. And I love reporting on stories of women who had firearms and who were able to defend themselves. There was a story earlier this year, a woman coming out of a bank in Ohio. She gets to her car, and as she's opening the door, a guy comes up behind her, pushes her into her car. He's a convicted sex offender who's out on parole. She's able, as she's, bent over there to get her gun, she turns around, she fires a shot, she misses, but man, he's gone. Now, would I have preferred that he have been hit? I don't care. I prefer that she not have been raped, and that's
Absolutely.
what the result was. She didn't get raped.
Yes, and the press goes nuts trying to tell women, especially mothers, that they shouldn't have guns in the home because it's unsafe for children.
Right.
Yet, if you're in your home with your 3-month-old baby or your 18-month-old child and someone invades your house, how are you going to protect yourself? And as we're in situations
You're not supposed to.
No, you're not. You're just supposed to lay over and take it. And
Exactly.
I don't understand that. I mean, if we really care about violence against women, we should be making these more accessible and really advocating women get to know how to operate guns.
But see now, okay, so see, this is where the gun control advocates start shaking their fists at you, Gail.
Yes.
Because
Go ahead.
Because their goal is to keep people ignorant and afraid of firearms.
Afraid of them, yes, absolutely.
And that's the thing, it's perfectly, you're perfectly capable as a parent of having firearms stored in the home and having children around and it be safe. Now, you as a parent are going to know your kids as individuals, and you're going to know what decisions are best for you. I've got 5 kids, and how I've stored my firearms have varied over the years. But I've never believed that my kids would be better off not knowing anything about guns,
Right.
not knowing that we had guns in the home. I want my children to know the power of a firearm. I want them to know it's not a toy. I want them to know if they see it, stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. And I want them to know that they can safely handle firearms when I'm present, that they can learn to be responsible around them, that we can go hunting together, we can go to the range together.
And that's something a father passes down to his children. Some of my fondest memories of childhood interactions with my dad were going out to the woods, going out to the mountains, and him teaching me how to use a rifle and doing some target practice. And that's something that I loved sharing that with him. And I think that's something that parents can impart to their children, especially fathers, because fathers have this responsibility to really protect their families. And women do as well, but when they're made by the press to feel so crazy about the guns being dangerous to their children, well, the reality of the statistics are that swimming pools are more dangerous for kids than guns are. But do you ever hear that from the press? You don't.
Never. Oh, no, never at all. Stairs, frankly, are more dangerous to children than firearms. We have more accidents involving falls in this country than we do involving firearms. And by the way, then the numbers continue to go down, even as gun ownership continues to go up, which indicates once again, and this is where I think it really comes back to this basic philosophical mindset, Gail, of are we children? Are we always going to be children?
Yes.
Are we always going to need to be taken care of? I did an interview today, and the host was a guy out in California, and he referred to Jovan Belcher as a kid. And I stopped him, and I said, whoa. I said, just before we get started here, I said, Jovan Belcher was a grown man.
Yes.
He was a professional athlete. He was a father. I became a dad when I was 23. So this stuff of calling people in their mid-20s kids, no. And when we refer to people who are grown men and women as kids, this juvenilization of society where we try to delay adulthood as much as possible.
Yes.
And delay responsibility and delay all of these things, we are far more capable than our government and progressivism gives us credit for.
That's right. And all the stuff that went on with health insurance and trying to keep children on the parents' insurance for longer and longer, it plays into that as well. I mean, in terms of being able to sentence kids for when they violate the law, liberals want us to treat them as children, but if they want to be able to go get an abortion without parental notification, you can do that at 13. And it's like this inconsistent way of evaluating people's age, and it suits their purposes instead of just saying, it's a continuum, and we as parents have a responsibility to continue to teach our kids how to grow into this responsibility. And the more that we cede that to the government in our food regulations, what the schools provide, what types of opportunities we give our kids, those are things that are going to make the next generation weak, and we can't stand to have a weak next generation.
Absolutely. Gail, listen, I really appreciate you coming in the studio tonight. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much for having me.